Chapter 1. The Ritual of Clearing Space. Every year, around March or April, millions of households around the world participate in a massive, transformative ritual: spring cleaning. We go room to room, opening windows, dusting old corners, and figuring out what stays, what goes, and where to organize it all. Now, spring cleaning is infamous for another reason. Some of the best, most passionate arguments in history have happened during this chore. And as someone who has lost just about every single one of those arguments, I've learned a precious, lifelong lesson. When you do spring cleaning, your analysis shouldn't just be about whether an item physically needs to be thrown out. You also have to navigate a highly complex, unpredictable algorithm. What will I be asked to throw out when I, hypothetically, ask my wife about that ugly chipped vase in the basement, the one she hasn't used since the day we first met? But in all seriousness, spring cleaning is a deeply cathartic chore. Whether it takes you an hour, a weekend, or even longer, when you finally finish, you feel an undeniable sense of accomplishment. Everything you did boiled down to just two simple questions. Are you going to throw it out or keep it? And if you keep it, where does it go? We tidy our homes, our offices, our places of worship, our sports fields, and our public parks. We take meticulous account of the material things we own. But if it is so incredibly important to assess our physical possessions, shouldn't we do the exact same for our inner well-being? Chapter 2. The Royal Proclamation. To understand what this kind of inner spring cleaning looks like, we have to look back to an old folk tale. Once, a king decided it was time to search for a wife. Heralds rode out across the land announcing the royal news and inviting every eligible woman in the kingdom to gather at the palace so the king could choose his queen. On the appointed day, the castle's grand halls were packed to the brim with hopeful brides, each dressed in her finest attire, waiting anxiously to catch the king's eye. Finally, the heavy doors opened. The king and his loyal secretary walked in, and the king took his place upon the throne. The secretary stepped forward, thanked the crowd for coming, and then made a proclamation that changed everything. "His Highness welcomes you all," he announced. "But before he chooses, you must know that he has recently come into possession of a mirror. This is no ordinary mirror. It is a magical mirror that judges your character. For every single mistake you have made in your life, the mirror will display a distinct blemish. Anyone wishing to marry the king must first step forward and look into it." Chapter 3. The Silence of the Courtyard. The grand hall went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. The excitement instantly evaporated, replaced by a wave of cold anxiety. The secretary waited, looking out over the crowd, but nobody moved. One by one, the women began to look away. They looked at the floor, whispered nervously to those next to them, and slowly stepped backward into the shadows of the hall. They refused to look. Why? Because they were terrified of what they would see. They were terrified of having their deepest regrets, their secret mistakes, and their human flaws exposed to the king, and worse, to everyone else. And honestly, most of us are exactly like those hopeful brides standing in that palace hall. We are rarely willing to look at our own blemishes. Genuine, honest introspection is a scary thing. To do it right, you have to be ready to face the good, the bad, and the ugly of who you are. It is much easier to keep the basement door shut and pretend the chipped vase isn't down there. Chapter 4. The Courage to Stand Alone. But then, the heavy silence was broken. A young woman stepped forward out of the crowd. She wasn't wearing royal silks or expensive jewelry. She was an ordinary girl from an ordinary family. Yet, as she walked toward the massive, intimidating mirror, there was no fear in her eyes. The secretary stopped her, asking if she was absolutely certain she wanted to expose her blemishes to the world. The girl looked at him, smiled warmly, and spoke words that cut through the fear in the room. "Why should I be afraid? We all have made mistakes. and we all can be forgiven and improve from those mistakes. Chapter 5. The Ultimate Self-Cleaning. Upon hearing her words, the king did not wait for her to peer into the glass. He stood up from his throne, walked down to her, and addressed the entire court. "This mirror's magic," the king said, "is not that it shows blemishes, but by having the courage to come and stand before it, this woman's confidence and her deep understanding have won me over." He chose her to be his queen on the spot. Because the truth is, the magic mirror was a test of honesty. The king knew that a person who can face their own flaws without fear of judgment is a person of true strength. So, as we think about our own lives, let's take a cue from the ordinary queen. When we realize and accept that making mistakes is simply a part of the human experience, and that we have the power to grow and learn from them, the fear of looking inward vanishes. Introspection and the subsequent self-cleaning are nothing to be afraid of. In fact, clearing out the old, dusty regrets of our past to make room for who we are becoming is one of the most remarkable things we can do. So, the next time you find yourself tidying up your physical space, take a moment to look in the mirror. Ask yourself, what stays? What goes? And am I ready to let myself grow?